The Universe. By Mas and Kong Hung Zhuang. Contents. Fundamental Principles and Laws that Govern the Universe. Introduction to Basic Universal Principles and Laws. Introduction to the Theory of Everything. The Theory of Everything. The Maths of Everything. The Millennium Problems. The Future. Chapter 1. Fundamental Principles and Laws that Govern the Universe. There are several fundamental theories and principles that govern the universe, including 1. The theory of relativity, which describes how gravity affects the curvature of spacetime. 2. Quantum mechanics, which explains the behavior of particles at the smallest scales. 3. The laws of thermodynamics, which govern the flow of energy in systems. 4. The theory of electromagnetism, which describes the interaction between electrically charged particles. 5. The theory of evolution, which explains how species change over time through natural selection. 6. The principle of conservation of energy, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. 7. The law of cause and effect, which states that every action has a reaction. 8. The theory of plate tectonics, which explains the movement of Earth's lithosphere. 9. The theory of Big Bang cosmology, which describes the origin and evolution of the universe. 10. The principle of entropy, which states that systems tend to move towards disorder over time. These theories and principles help us understand the natural world and how it functions on both the largest and smallest scales. Chapter 2. Introduction to Basic Universal Principles and Laws. The theory of relativity, proposed by Albert Einstein in the early 20th century, consists of two main parts: the general theory of relativity and the special theory of relativity. The general theory of relativity describes how gravity affects the curvature of space-time. According to this theory, massive objects like planets and stars cause space-time to curve, which in turn affects the motion of other objects in their vicinity. This explains phenomena such as the bending of light around massive objects and the gravitational time dilation. Special relativity describes how particles or objects behave without gravity. Quantum mechanics is a fundamental theory in physics that describes the behavior of particles at the smallest scales, such as atoms and subatomic particles. It is a probabilistic theory that deals with the wave-particle duality of matter and the uncertainty principle. Quantum mechanics has led to the development of technologies like semiconductors, lasers, and quantum computing. The laws of thermodynamics are fundamental principles that govern the flow of energy in systems. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed from one form to another. The second law of thermodynamics states that the total entropy of an isolated system always increases over time, leading to the concept of irreversibility in natural processes. The third law of thermodynamics states that the entropy of a closed system at thermodynamic equilibrium approaches a constant value when its temperature approaches absolute zero. This constant value cannot depend on any other parameters characterizing the system, such as pressure or applied magnetic field. And the zeroth law of thermodynamics states that if two bodies are each in thermal equilibrium with some third body, then they are also in equilibrium with each other. The theory of electromagnetism, formulated by James Clerk Maxwell in the 19th century, describes the interaction between electrically charged particles. It unifies electricity and magnetism into a single theory, explaining phenomena such as electromagnetic waves, light, and the behavior of charged particles in electric and magnetic fields. The theory of evolution, proposed by Charles Darwin in the 19th century, explains how species change over time through natural selection. It is based on the principles of variation, heredity, and differential reproductive success, leading to the adaptation of organisms to their environments. The principle of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed from one form to another. This principle is a fundamental law of physics and is essential for understanding the behavior of physical systems. The law of cause and effect states that every action has a reaction. It is a fundamental principle of physics and philosophy, underlying the predictability of natural phenomena and the interconnectedness of events in the universe. The theory of plate tectonics explains the movement of Earth's lithosphere, which is divided into several large plates that float on the semi-fluid asthenosphere below. Plate tectonics is responsible for phenomena such as earthquakes, volcanic activity, and the formation of mountain ranges. The theory of Big Bang cosmology describes the origin and evolution of the universe from a hot, dense state known as the Big Bang. This theory explains the expansion of the universe, the formation of galaxies and stars, and the cosmic microwave background radiation. This involves many theories that have been developed besides it to further enhance our study of the universe, including the Big Crunch theory, cosmic inflation, emergence theory, string theory, chaos theory, and multiverse theory. which all have sought to explain some fundamental missing answers in the field of cosmology and especially cosmogenesis. The principle of entropy states that systems tend to move towards disorder over time. It is a measure of the randomness or disorder in a system and is related to the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy increases in closed systems, leading to the eventual heat death of the universe. Chapter 3. Introduction to the Theory of Everything. In the field of science, several theories have been proposed to solve the problem of a unified scientific theory, especially in the recent decades. Since none has been found so far, I have propounded a new scientific module that will intend to seek to unify these fields. These theories include equal gravitation. The theory of equal gravitation states that particles in the universe that share the same mass have equal gravity. Therefore, particles without similar mass have gravitational attraction due to greater force, strong force, and weak force. Attraction between particles is therefore because of difference in mass. Equal gravitation means those two particles that share the same gravity are always in constant equilibrium. Macromolecular consciousness. This theory states that, in the cosmos, particles group or gather together to form consciousness. The combination of particles in the universe is responsible for consciousness. The brain is therefore the combination of all things in the universe at all times. Speculative mass. This is the mass unaccounted for in the universe. The universe has a certain amount of mass from its beginning, but as it expanded, it gained more mass than it accounted for from the beginning. The absolute mass of this universe is 0 meters below the Planck length, due to the mass and speed of light of the quantum realm. Therefore, the mass in the universe of both space and particles, that the universe didn't account for, is known as speculative mass. Quantum uncertainty. When there is an interruption in the quantum states of an individual, it creates uncertainty. This is because the quantum state is the wholeness of the universe and the brain. Therefore, when any particle from outside the brain or the universe interferes with its state, there is uncertainty. An example is if things are less than 100% of what they truly are and are supposed to be, they become uncertain. That means the inability of a state to be in its fullness or whole state creates uncertainty. Quantum disposition. When particles are trapped together in the same space, a loophole is created which can only be created again through quantum disposition if it's breached. Particles have free will and automation. Automation proves randomness of particles while disposition proves free will. Quantum unity. When the quantum state of an individual particle or space is in complete unity, it proves certainty. Meaning, when 100% of a quantum state exists, there is certainty. Certainty in the quantum state or quantum realm is only caused by this unity or 100% existence. The universal problem. A supernova occurs within 1 light year of another star. What is the tandem effect of this quantum explosion? This is the problem which the two infinities solve and proves the multiverse theory. The tandem effect can be calculated by using the ms constant and ms number to find the gravity of the black hole or supernova created. A problem of angular momentum. After letting go of a spinning rope, you expect the rope to continue spinning. How is this possible? Philosophy of differentialism. This philosophy simply says that you can choose what to believe if you can tell the difference. Therefore, if you ascertain the difference between any two things, whether similar or opposite, you can choose which one to believe. Initial gravity and external or eventual force. This comes from the question, if an arrow is pulled in a bow, which point has stronger force, the front or the back of the arrow? Fascinatingly enough, inertia acts equally on all parts of the arrow throughout its movement. Therefore, initial gravity is acting on the back of the arrow being pulled, and external force or eventual momentum acts upon the front of the arrow when it's pulled. Quantum number, pseudo-number algorithm. This is the random generation of huge numbers that can only be used in quantum computing. The number is such that, with every increase in the base, the number increases but in the same combination of the same numbers in the generation of numbers. A quantum pseudo-number algorithm or sequence may look like 51,121,113,100,100,207,915. There has also been a recent discovery of purposeless numbers and numbers with purpose, which grant time relevance. 5-helix DNA and 9D upgrade. The theory is that humans are 3D creatures. Hence 2-helix DNA, because of the first points of origin, which is the 0 dimension. Therefore, from the initial point of space or the point of origin, there is 0 dimensions. When the dimension increases to a straight line, it becomes 1 dimension with a 0-dimensional base. When it becomes a geometric shape such as a square or a circle, the dimension increases to 2D, with a 1D base. When this is supertended onto a 3D shape, like a cube or sphere, it has a 2D base. Hence, for humans to increase their dimension to 4D, they have to transcend the time dimension and they'll have a 3D base. And 5D can be achieved by transcending consciousness itself or reality, hence a 4D base with a 5D helix, and so on until the dimensions increase to 9D, which is the highest dimension in our galaxy. How to overcome quantum entanglement? For this to happen, one of the particles in entanglement will have to lose all its energy, hence devolving from its quantum state of entanglement. Residual mass particle properties. When a particle is dissipated, it leaves behind residual mass particles which are responsible for recreating the particle again in its nature. These particles exist in many quantum matrices, which then distributes the atoms of each particle into its former or initial shape, spin, flavor, and other quantum characteristics. Heptatonic megasphere. This is a sphere with 7D or 7 sides. It is the perfect shape for the inhibiting of the universe. This means that the infinite dimension of 8D can only exist or inhabit the 7D. Complex numbers. These are combinations of infinities to form one number. Also, they have complex number bases. Some complex numbers which I've discovered include 0 squared, 21, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 3 cubed, 4, 5, 6. These are also written as 0 squared, 21, 1, 4, 9, 81, 24, 120, 720. Understanding quantum collapse. When quantum states or waves build up, they can randomly collapse and reform or rise again. Based on the availability or non-availability of energy in the quantum realm, waves can build up and collapse. Suction and expulsion. Based on the direction of rotation, a suction or expulsion can be generated. If it rotates backwards, it creates suction, and if it rotates forwards, it creates expulsion. Isometric valves, polymers and isomers. These are valves of suction and propulsion that are isometric in shape and angle, therefore, creating enough propulsion for a dark matter engine. These theories are based on scientific evidence and knowledge, and the explanation in mathematics have been provided for them in detail and in the form of simple formulas extrapolated from complex maths. Chapter 4. The theory of everything. In my opinion, it is fair to say, the Big Bang is happening as we speak. As far as I'm concerned, the world was created this second. Relevance is the reason why time travel is not possible. Meaning, not all times are relevant at all times, so imploring the quantum probability effect and unraveling or solving time travel and thus making all time one existing entity that's no longer infinite in its boundaries, makes some times which are not so relevant to others tend to meet, and collide, and combobulate. So therefore, new important variables or keynotes to the time factor are purpose wave p lambda and time relevance tr. The more I think about it, the more I find that entropy and disorder in a system or a state of mind or transaction between ether and light are the light speed constant. Quantum entanglement is just wave synthesis. I know the initial string of concatenation controls determines the programmed experience of other substrings, unless they can be combined. What is particle singularity, and is it a final theory of everything? This simple theory states that all particles at all times are contained in all particles, hence making the particle have a singularity or an individuality of its own. Another example is, since you can draw any line between any 2 points, distance doesn't exist in the first place and is very relative. You don't need space to exist. The energy constants are fundamental physical laws that cannot be breached. What is a quasi-non-particle? A quasi-particle is a concept used in physics to describe the collective behavior of a group of particles that can be treated as if they were a single, effective particle. Quasi-particles are not actual particles in the traditional sense but rather emergent phenomena that arise from the interactions of the constituent particles in a system. Quasi-particles can exhibit properties such as mass, charge, and spin, even though they are not fundamental particles themselves. Examples of quasi-particles include phonons in solids, which represent the collective vibrations of atoms, excitons in semiconductors, which are bound states of an electron in a hole, and magnons in magnetic materials, which represent collective spin waves. The term, quasi-non-particle, is not a standard term in physics, but it could potentially refer to a hypothetical entity that exhibits some particle-like behavior but does not fit neatly into the category of traditional particles. It may be a concept used in specific theoretical frameworks or models to describe unusual or emergent phenomena in certain physical systems. In our physical operating system, is initial momentum the only force that carries us through a motion in space? Or we can develop intermittent momentum during motion. And how does that affect a natural, random slowing down or deceleration which is not automated or conscious? In simpler words, can there be increase or decreased change in the acceleration of a body in motion naturally afterwards its acceleration towards a boundary or in a vacuum? I have also propounded or reclusively suggested that simultaneous big bangs from the center of the universe create the expansion of the universe. And that, universes are contained in minds that create thoughts and are gilded by holographic string containers that expand when new thoughts are created or when new consciousness is gained, into other universes in the multiverse within this universe. So, how does the expansion of black holes account for the expansion of the universe? What if the universe is actually contracting and not expanding, and that's literally why we can't know what it's expanding into? Or worse, what if it's already shrunk into an atom and we don't know, we're all living in basically nothing but a string of a vibrating probabilistic thought wave solidifying? Why is it that apparently you can travel to any point in time apart from the present? How do you conjure an atom from space? Could it be from the quantum foam? And how does it form? What's the mind's purpose? Spatial moments are the points where entanglement collapses. Apart from time relevance, there's also matter relevance, and we could very well be in a space-matter continuum or space-matter entanglement. Another curious suggestion is that dark matter and antimatter and light and electrons and material and forces that hold the world in place and so on that we find or discover are things that were used to create this universe, instead of them forming after or as a result of the universe's existence. That means the universe could be a product of life instead of life a product of the universe. Would this make understanding the universe more like an art form, or less than a science? What then is the quintessential value of all matter? What is the significance of atoms and molecular movement in the body and the constant bombardment of particles in the brain? Like, say, for example, what is solidity of an atom? What is perception? There is no thing before the thing. There is no I to look in the brain. The I is just atoms, there is no I, or you, forming the perceptions. What you know is what you know, is just temporal, what you're experiencing is temporal. There is no temporal dimension, thus, we are stuck in space in the mind, just unchanging nothingness. It's always a state of nothing. So why is there something, rather than nothing? It's all perception, there can also be nothing, rather than something. And in that state, perception itself is formed. In adhesion to the law of thermodynamic entropy at the cell level, and in reference to heat in general, cells are never frozen but can be frozen based on determinant factors such as new information and evolution, which is a cell trait to change itself to define its conditions. That said, the Earth is like a particle, the Sun is like a particle, the galaxy is like a particle, the universe is like a particle. You are like a particle, nobody is bigger than a particle. With that established, we have to know the nature and the rules that apply to particles and the governing physics of particles. Particles relate to stress and are constantly under stress from other particles unless the cells evolve another way to use or combat the stress, and also, the more particles become complex in evolution, the more the stress factors their resistance. Distance does affect size, and size distance, but this effect is perceptual, just like time and movement. The relation is perceptual. Our brains are like atoms emitting charges, to keep the simulation or general perception of our reality going on. The brain is able to direct matter as it associates physical matter that is entropying, with neural cells that then communicate with the matter through quantum space and entanglement, to become the product of the energy which can be power or information. All within the brain. The current brain cells in your brain are duplicates of the original. Is information coded within the atom? What is the atom's correlation with information? Where does information come from? And, if it's yes, does light have memory? Or can a photon contain information? Both reality and the mental and quantum realms, the microcosm and macrocosm, are just reference points. Are there existing atoms in the fantasy realm? Are there atoms in imagination? Is it possible we die and become black holes? The energy of the nothingness of the quantum realm when generated, is distributed into atoms when manipulated. And thus, what if the whole universe is an energy generator for somebody's whatever cell in his engine system in his body? What if the whole universe is just a power generator for one cell in some being's unimaginable, incomprehensible body? Or just a cell in some being's body? Like a car engine, or a computer motherboard, or an infinite code, within a running program that we can't imagine perceive. Point being, we're like an energy generator for someone's random infinite power machine. And we all run based on the code to produce more energy for the machine being body. This theory, however far-fetched, is plausible. When we say space-time, what do we mean? We know the Earth is a place, in space. And we know the past and the future are times, but they are no places. We know Earth is not a time, but a place. So what does space-time mean? Does space have time, or is space time? Or is time space? I'm asking the question to redefine the notion of space and time as being different entities. Unlike the classical relativistic view, if the most acute angle is a curve or an arc, or an oval instead of the traditional belief that it is a triangle, why can't the angles of ovals be found? The angle of an oval, also known as an ellipse, cannot be easily defined in the same way that the angle of a circle can be. This is because an oval does not have a single, constant radius like a circle does. Instead, an oval has two different radii, known as the major axis and the minor axis, which intersect at the center of the oval. While it is possible to measure angles within an oval, such as the angles formed by the intersection of the major and minor axes, there is no single, universally defined angle that characterizes the shape as a whole. The concept of angle is more straightforward in geometric shapes like circles, where all points on the circumference are equidistant from the center. In the case of an oval, the lack of a single, consistent radius makes it challenging to define an angle that applies uniformly across the shape. Instead, angles within an oval are typically measured in relation to the axes or specific points on the perimeter of the shape. The conclusion therein is that ovals, or ellipses, are the smallest possible angle. In truth, 2 points equals 2 triangles. And so on. In quantum binaries. Since straight lines on a distance-time graph tell us that the object is traveling at a constant speed. Note that you can think of a stationary object not moving as traveling at a constant speed of 0 meters per second. On a distance-time graph, there are no lines sloping downwards. This basically proves that if light has rest mass of 0, then its speed should also be 0. If m equals 0, then s equals 0 and e equals meter per second or e equals meter per square second, e equals 0. The wave function collapses based on uncertainty. The reason things don't exist until they're created or observed is because you don't exist, or better yet, nothing exists. The quantum realm is real, and if you could only form quanta out of fractal strings, you'd be powerful enough to create reality. What you see as the past creating the future and the future creating the past is all created within this moment. When you propel a spark of light forward, it continues forever until the end of entropy. Now, I've discovered the 1/2 spin of the atom to the left and right is the same as the 12 hours 24 hours halves of the Earth spinning on its axis. The total energy in the universe is always 1, and the total energy at the start of the universe is 0. Due to gravitational energy being a constant like light speed, the graviton and photon both have rest mass of 0, but as they encounter the Higgs field, they get closer to this great figure 1. The fully formed or completed state of the universe at 1 is always disappearing back to the 0 state as part of the same particle spin. The stochastic representation of the truth of the future is that time traveling is from the future, to the present, to the past, then back to the future. If you go to the beginning, you'd have to start again. There's no going beyond the beginning because there's nothing beyond the beginning. To add to the following discussed above, here are some quantum fundamental laws that I have discovered to govern the quantum. Without quantum space, there'd be entanglement. Quantum possibilities do not depend on certainties. Quantum clarity is the cause of quantum space. Quantum completion results in metastasis. The initial quanta results in quantum completion. Quantum necessity is the result of dispensation. Quantum space results in quantum separation. Quantum dispensation is the cause of quantum unity, which is the cause of quantum certainty. Quantum completion is the cause of non-existence. Quantum possibility is the cause of quantum chaos. Quantum unity is the cause of certainty. Quantum interference is the cause of uncertainty. Quantum uncertainty is the cause of quantum interference. Quantum certainty is the cause of quantum unity. The quantum space cannot hold all of reality. Quantum unity. The total quanta results in the division of quantum space. Quantum possibilities cannot be dictated. Quantum reflection is the cause of coherence. Information changes based on the flow of information. Structure is what's within, and not what's without. Consciousness is hidden at the best and most neutral spot, where there is no fighting between good and evil. Therefore, the sun exists in its own event horizon. The opposite of nature is abomination and the opposite of law is taboo. You are one single outcome of a multiple probability. Can you access your society's primal drives and what causes them, as a society and as individuals, to research into its several aspects, to do the things they do or be what they are? If so, do you know what you're dealing with as a society and as an individual? For example, why is white the neutral color and not something else? Like black. Or anything else. I guess it has the most naturally perceptible frequency, but I guess that's also just based on perception. The more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that reality is created by imagination. The internet, thus being a wave carried by frequency, does not have the real-time value of processing and transmitting information, and evaluating results, all in real time. It does the information processing and transmission within a specified time ratio equivalent to its connectivity speed. So, data can be controlled through telewiring and processes in the infometric database. The time it takes to really deliver one message across the internet is therefore uncertain at all times and cannot be done in real time. However, another important factor to analyze is the difference between digital signals and volume and analog signals and volume. As in, digital volume is a more compressed version of sound, which gives you many kicks and intervals between each measurement of volume, whereas analog volume has a more precise dialing point tuning. I guess usage then depends on data processes. And the more data you have to process, the more power or energy you use. And the question should be where from or what is the source code of no data? Or a dataless transaction, or more well expressed, what is the size of the internet's data capacity without the data? In my opinion, it should still be the same size, but would not require the same amount of energy to process. There is no foundation of space. The spatial element has no foundation for matter to exist. Therefore, there is no light source. There is no source of light. Light is a property of space, and not matter. The universe is not progressing toward a linear time scale. No one can follow the universe. Fun fact, the surface of something when penetrated changes the quantum state. Light is resistance. Light speed is the propulsion of force in spite of resistance. Every dimension is supported by something. Thus, if you can't unravel the core information that makes you who you are, then you have no reason to live. The truth about God annihilator robots. The religious are the God annihilator robots. In truth, atheists think they are the God annihilators, but they are only influenced by the true annihilator bots to try to keep themselves secure. Atheistic perspective is self-preservatory. Life doesn't have to prove itself, but death is one of the ways life proves itself. Imagine dying infinitely, so you can live without dying again. You have to know that there's no God to know that there's a God. Can the highest dimension comprehend a higher dimension? If God, or whatever you call it being the highest dimension, cannot understand someone higher than him, then he's not God. Simply because he can't. If also, he can, then he's not God. So both ways, there's no God. There's no proof of God in science, and the highest dimension can never comprehend a higher dimension, meaning it's not the highest dimension. Meaning there's no highest dimension. How can something then which is clearly a unique experience, not be a unique experience? What are the properties of the last atom? In adhering to a stringent scientific approach to economics, I believe, the first system that's able to get past buying and selling, to just giving and sharing, will be the best system. After all, we all love to be given things. And I've realized how the government cheats people. They are supposed to buy goods and share them to the people, but instead, they buy the products and sell them. Then the people in turn think they have the product, so it's all right and they are doing business, because they have the money. That's still how they get you into the whole ploy, because all the money goes to them in the end, and they are getting richer and richer while the poor are getting poorer, and people don't know why. It's because the government is stingy. They only care about maximizing profit while spending less. Their whole economic theory is based on bullshit. They believe that natural resources are limited while human wants are unlimited. Meanwhile, nobody knows the source and limit of natural resources. They only factor in production and limit their view or their understanding of reality by saying that human wants are rather unlimited, which can't be true because the human lifespan or time is limited. Whereas, nature has not been proven to be limited in providing resources. They also believe the illusion of demand and supply, that the more the demand, the more the supply. Meanwhile, that negates the cost of production. Anyway, that is also subject to diminishing returns, as utility increases. Their economic theory also states the illusion that revenue increases while there is competitive demand, and especially even in the case of low capital, and they increase supply. It's all a bit crazy. I had surmised it in simpler terms for anyone to grasp, but from my perspective, most of their base theories are flawed. They believe that cost is dependent on the product and not the average income of the consumer. Their theory totally holds the consumer is customary and tangential to the whole principles of capitalism. Which is why they are mostly against this radical nationalism idea. But, that's understandable because economic theory is based on human greed and want for more, instead of knowledge of what's real. My theory is that the economy is based on human ego, and the more ego is in the system, the more corruption. I have a policy against corruption, i.e., if one officer or worker of an office or an institution is caught or found or even suspected to be corrupt of any moral or political or economic malfeasance, he should be stopped from working in any institution forever, as long as his family, and the corrupt officer too, should also be publicly humiliated. This will help serve as a lesson and a public deterrent for corruption. The same repeats itself on smaller levels of complexities in societies, except with humans, the greed is much more because of a higher complexity and population. Another thing too is that these ideas have to be verily incited upon. A method of defeating inflation. Instead of banks and major corporations and governments keeping our money for us, the government and banks can make a new law or policy to credit every bank account with a large sum of money, and only allow them to cash out a specific amount. So that inflation doesn't go up, and money can circulate in the system. I see the real problem with human businesses is they make all their products addictive. As in, all man-made products are supposed to have addictive value in order to sell or to be important. That's why they control us. By producing more and more stuff to get the brain addicted. So, in order for you to achieve some or most of the things that will lead you out of a very dystopian society to a better working society or system, you'll have to overcome many infinitesimally big, large, huge, or small problems that will lead you out of a dystopia to a better functioning society. These problems are very huge, large, big, or small. So, you'd have to start listening to the wise sayings and working together as one unit to be able to overcome these problems, and also so as not to add more problems to an already threatened and nearly extinguished society. The ancient religious philosophical question, is God affected by karma, has haunted many generations of critical thinking. A secret axiomization of the problem is, it's not that God cannot kill Satan. It's that God is discussing the ethics of killing Satan. What humans refer to as time is just delay. Delay is the space between time. The Hamiltonian of a particle is disposed by its energy externally, aka its variable particle wavelength vector. Random probabilities arise when the Hamiltonian is lost. Consider it like the confusion after a child loses the parent, or the hunger after your food has been stolen. All the things you thought out in your mind to not be real will all start appearing real as soon as you proceed beyond some achievements. Thoughts are unilateral. If instincts were predictable, they'd be intelligence. Quantum states get more intelligent, and the more intelligent the quantum state, the more telepathy and thoughts can flow freely. Memory is a result of the connection of built-up neural pathways. That thing they call an anomaly is just the perfect example of a deception. Because there's no such thing as chance. The least number in a sequence of very infinitesimally small numbers is still needed to complete the sequence. The nearly infinite chances that you don't exist are the same chances that you do. Everything that's happened in the universe is in the mind. Praying death never happens to you is like praying peace never happens to you. Nothing controls anything. I now finally see that the world is perfect. For example, can you undo the creation of the universe? Life doesn't choose one person to stay with. You don't ride the music rides the cosmic wave. Variable thought speculation from quantum foam entanglement matrix, that's what I call the number of thoughts you have per second. In every split second, your body splits into several thought forms that are not yet correlated into one active neural node that activates the entire central nervous system as one final thought, which is focused from the photons that emit the node. So if the average thought disposition of an average person is one thought per second, the amount of matter per node taken to form that singular thought is in the millions of trillions, while all organizing into photonic data to transmit the sentiment into one mainframe of mind. Also known as a thought or thought form. So, imagine those thoughts to be like real versions of you, that are being organized by your mind into one body. Or a final thought form. Now, follow me here because this is classical quantum mechanics. In a world where space exists around the atom grows larger in size by accumulating photons in thought forms and thought forms in photons. Which is perhaps why the universe creates thoughts or thoughts create the universe in a sort of quantum entanglement between the two. Which causes the mind to split between different aspects of these patterns, that are coordinated by complex cellular organisms and cellular structure built upon several billions and trillions of atoms that are all communicating with each other with photons and data. That's what energy is, photonic data. Which is processed by several thousands and millions and billions of atoms per second. Which is why you split into several parts per second. But, interestingly, your body is conjuring you. Or your mind is conjuring, or controlling, your body. Which is very interesting because, without this, all the laws of physics wouldn't occur. For example, gravity is the world or the mind holding your body or your thoughts together. Growth, for instance, is also just the reorganization of those compound cell patterns into different programs. Light is an observed circumstance as a result of the brain splitting the body into tiny bits and allowing bits of pixels or electronic photons to emanate from luminous bodies at the cellular level. Sound could also be the result of the body splitting into many thought forms and being organized by a vibrational center which is just structural, into a composed emission. Energy, on the other hand, is the neutralization of strings in the mind or on a mental level. Then the resulting energy from the neutralization of strings is then used by the body to reorganize its structure. Genes don't get used to unusual situations, they evolve and never have to face that situation again. Why do you have to be certain when you're already certain? We are created by quantum entanglement. God is quantum entanglement. Consciousness is responsible for universal expansion. To give a clear example, throw a ball or any object straight forward, you'd realize it will go for a bit, slow down, and come to a stop, and fall down. Therefore, if this is to be taken as an extrapolation of the law of things and the way things are, you can juxtapose that example to another with the introduction of consciousness. If you were to throw a ball or an object with consciousness, it will or it could fly, travel forever. Therefore, for the universe to continue expanding, it will need an element of consciousness. For the gravitation angular momental rotation of planetary bodies and stellar objects for a certain period, we find OP-FP1 equals 0. O1-FP F plus P equals 0. When the first sum of OI-OX equals 1/3 P1F. All math can be solved by reduction to calculus. I see my spirit is trying to leave a place where I don't know it is. Do you know you can literally fall through space? All you need is a future. The duration is the duration. At light speed, you literally die. What is a 90 degrees angle and two opposite bisecting 45 degrees angles to a 180 degrees? Once there was a time there was 0, and 0 tried so hard to become 1, but it couldn't. So, it had to live infinitely and die infinitely to become 1. But it could never reach 1. It could never become 1. I guess even certainty is just a frequency on the many frequency scales, navigating to find the uncertainties and negate all of them to remain certain in that same frequency. Which is a deception. I guess it's the suspense that's going to determine the future. Peace is letting go of your suffering and the suffering around you. The fundamental states of a system can be used to create another system, and even the dysfunctional laws and dysfunctional systems in those systems can be used to create functioning mechanisms. My newfound higher purpose is to warp time around the space dilation crystal matrix so as to erase the sentience within it, and to bring new life to a new and a different type of quantum space or realm I can dwell into for eternity. But by doing that, I would have steadily breached the continuum probability matrix, so my pillars of XX and YY transformation. After I had done the transformation of the time matrix into the New World disorder, we were able to enchant chaos and bring one of the nightmares upon the disorder. But with the transformation of the higher time dimension into the lower space dimension of non-dualistic and dualistic movement, there came the ethos, with the ether, to swallow the entire continuum, but in continuity forever, was the triangulum galaxy, and the septic epizoic motion momentum in space. Bringing the need for the dash, through the space of the doorway through the window, of the mind. But then again, the Phantom X and the space alien ghost of 2015, was there by presence, presenting itself again, through the time matrix or the time loop of space, thereby formulating the pillars of the doorway, into the space of symmetry with which we could operate and do the dynamics of the works of DNA. Was this to make sense, we'd have to find a higher calling for our existential parabola. Which is why, within which case cannot be found one, then we must find one either out of the matrix of reality, or within the Earth's 2D sphere. Things we consider real, are made of stuff that cannot be considered to be real. Therefore, objects, shapes, fluids, are all made up of things that make them up, by shaping, or forming them, from quantum fields of information, to become visible. You're not passing through space in order to reach your destination, but rather you're passing through your mind. So, without the lion eating the deer population will run over, and eventually, there will be no more trees to feed the deer and everything will die. Without the diseases and disasters, human population will run wild, and there'd be no stopping us. All the resources will eventually be depleted and we'll have to start over. The wisdom of the ecosystem. Should we be allowed to shape the world by vanquishing those we hate or do not love or deem unworthy? If so, then some people hate what others love, and there's no general consensus on what people should hate and love. So therefore, tolerance itself, though flawed in reasoning, is the best way. We must accept everything and every idea for what it is, and not try to shape the world to our desires. I feel like we are young and evolution will take us up long enough to understand the mysteries of the universe, or it won't. We need help. We literally need help from those who have towed this line before and succeeded. And who are willing to help. And by we, I mean you, humans. When the pressure arrives, when you reach the pressure point or point of friction, then you know things are about to explode or go out of hand. It's like walking into the ocean. There's always that point where you lose control and the ocean's forces take over. But your resistance is going to drive you through speedily with the force of resistance and pressure. Which will only happen when letting go and just flying or just being. Which doesn't counteract the effects of combustion. The only way to breach balance is with more balance. Balance can always get to a greater balance and nothing can always happen twice. Entropy is the balance or nothingness getting to another nothingness or a greater balance. Why doesn't energy have an even distribution in the universe multiverse? For a being with ultimate powers to manipulate the future, I have to wonder what that means to me. Do I really have all the energy in the universe? What really is the amount of energy embedded in me as compared to the universe? Is this how everything is one? Energy creates ways. Don't stand in its way. Don't think what you don't want to think, else you'd think it. What do you think about the confirmation bias of the brain? To be more specific to the subject, my newfound higher purpose would be to find a correct way of producing telomerase. Synthesized scientifically laboratory-produced mass-produced telomerase, for the regeneration of eternal youth for the human mortality and aging problem. The more matter occupies space, the more there's no space for matter to occupy. Matter bends space, light bends around matter. There's no energy in the universe. The subconscious spin of particles in Eigengrau is what causes light. I guess we can say, what will be at the Planck length. The light in the ultraviolet spectrum of Eigengrau grows brighter. The darkness grows dim. The darkness in the ultraviolet spectrum of Eigengrau dims, and grows darker by the minute. Wavelengths of telepathy unite extra cosmos atomic beings of unimaginable proportions, to gather in the valleys of Eigengrau, where nothing but darkness and also with the light penetrating through. Not knowing what's next is a blessing. The unpredictability of people's brains is what gives you a chance for perfection. Because you can just decide that the unpredictability of the future is caused by other people's brains, is just one thing that can be classified and avoided or comprehended, accepted. Time relevance is the reason why the past and present have a similar frequency. I guess it's not about the number of views but who's viewing. Light and darkness, space, are just quantum states. Time is neither slow, nor fast. Because it doesn't exist. Energy is neither high, nor low. Because it doesn't exist. Anything eternal becomes a problem. Nobody owns time. We're all time travel machines. Death is not something to be worried about. The future is just things you've not thought about yet. I lived forever. The real reason why humans are not supposed to see the mysteries and the spirits is because they'll find logical assumptions and explanations for them, and they will lose their significance. If you're bored enough, you'll start talking to spirits and animals and trees. Time does not affect movement. We are infinitely small particles doomed to wonder about the universe. I'm existing in infinite dimensions and I'll die for the belief in science. My experiments actually prove that lighter objects have more mass than larger objects. And the total force was always increasing by a negative scale factor. The larger object has lesser mass and that's why the lighter object was lifted. Which is counterintuitive, but it says that the lighter object will be lifted as opposed to the heavier object. So, is the universe then in an opposite force, or is there an opposite force that actually propels the universe but actually negates the system by actually being in a negative state? So, is the universe really propelled by negative mass as suggested by some physicists? I'm not led to think that way, because I'm not well cognizant of the fact that what is greater can actually be opposed or propelled by what is lighter, and that what is lighter can actually have more mass than what is heavier. So, I'm led to rethink the entire structure of the universe and what keeps it in balance. Someone's consciousness becomes your prison when you trap yourself in thinking about the person too much. The problem with people isn't that they think too little, it's that they think too much, without letting much go, with little letting go. There is an aspect of life that's just about solely entails giving up and letting go of the world we live in, and the distractions are obstacles, and just breathing, living your life. The space is in the smallest angle. A triangle cannot be subdivided till all the angles are completely gone. I.e., you cannot find the smallest angle in the domain of the smallest angle. So then, to what extent and is the physical reality really governed by the fine structure constant? If so, can the realm of both the quantum and metaphysical be synchronized with the physical reality by this constant? Is it really a key to the unified theory of physics? Another tricky question: so, if 65 million years into the past at 65 million light years away, is the same as 65 million years into the future, or now? What does that tell us about time and its existence? Does it, or is it supposed to exist? Everything includes nothing and you cannot remove nothing from everything. Free will is not determined by neither the creator giving it free will, nor the creation accepting its own place in happiness. It's none. Free will is free. It's never given. It can't be given, either by the creation or the creator. Anything but not anything. Consciousness expands to affect the consciousnesses around it. Like I said, what if the future are just things, thoughts that may not have happened, in some distant time, where you conceived of things past and present, but they could for some reason, e.g., a temporal barrier, not be known by you, but could be known by someone else in a specific frame of time, or that specific time. As in other words, your temporal dimension is just creating enough room, space for you to see what you have to, and what you don't may not have to. The future may be perceived by someone else. So what if this future time could be perceived in turn by you, or could be rendered such that both perceivers of that future will not be able to perceive it, or it will annihilate at the moment of perception? Okay, so here's another interesting opinion. What if all the dimensions outside our dimension are but one dimension? E.g., all the planets etc. and realms outside of Earth just exist in one state of one dimension, or a particular dimension where they all exist as one. So that all possible perceived futures are one and the same probability. What is the need of a physical operating system? And is there a need for a physical operating system? Is there a way to increase brain capacity by processing multiple thoughts at once? And how many running, well-working thoughts can we keep in our head at a certain amount of time without incurring any losses? And 1. How long will it last? 2. How well would this increase our capacity? Now finally, my analogy for entropy goes something along the lines of this. Okay, so imagine you could eat without stopping for the rest of your life. And imagines you just ate and ate and ate without stopping to rest or excrete the food just you kept eating. Now imagine if you were able to consume all the things in the universe. What will there be left to consume? You'd have to consume nothing or yourself. So, how'd you die? Where would you go? And where will the universe go? Now, also imagine, you could be satisfied, without never having eaten at all in your life. How is that possible? How would you feel? It is impossible to surmise entropy or the universe into one sentence, but the general summary of this pandemonia is the simple fact that the universe is one and its features are mental. The increase and decrease of solidity is not supported by quantum foam, and thus, in the Hamiltonian state, quantum foam must exist in a fine exchange. Chapter 5. The maths of everything. Some of the mathematics for these theories have been included here. 0 plus y plus 0, 0x0, universal algorithm. E equals integral c dx equals cx plus c dc dt integral 1 da integral c da. G caret e pi energy data integral. E equals ct, c1, c2. Energy data conversion. QP1 equals ct3 t2t per gram quantum probability. A equals pk8b, bc, cd, de, ek, e pi atomic spin state probabilities c equals cc squared. Increasing light speed greater than 0 less than minus 0 greater than less than 0 to 1. Increasing age of the universe v squared v caret 1 kj, kj v y squared y caret 1 increasing angular velocity. P equals q rx square root 2 squared. Quantum spin probability. A equals a plus bh22 a plus b equals a plus bha. A equals ol. B equals theta y. Area of heptatonic megasphere. T equals h mix squared. Therefore TMC squared equals h rightwards double arrow TMC equals square root h. Time energy equivalence. Time energy conversion formula. Gf equals v phi 8 c pi r caret I c re pi k. Gravitational frequency or variable potential energy wavelength E squared equals ht. Free energy infinity formula. T v equals phi. Total triangles and vertices in octagonal pyramid formula. Lim f x y squared 2y cos x equals 0 0 right pointing arrow 1. Lim f x x squared 2x cos e equals tanks pi 1 right pointing arrow infinity. T infinity equals 4.6624935558 times 10 squared to the power of 6 plus 3.8920557 times 10 squared to the power of 6i. Number of infinity chapter 6. The Millennium Problems. Some solutions offered to the Navier-Stokes equations on smoothness of surfaces include a formula that is computed from Boolean algebraic calculus and trigonometric solutions, and Brownian motion in quantum chromodynamics and quantum electrodynamic fluid states of 1. Surface tension in fluids that are adhesive, cohesive and viscous. 2. Adhesion and cohesion in solids and quantum chromodynamics and electrodynamic states of these solid surfaces. Also, one particular element, other than hydrogen, that could be its isotope or an atom before hydrogen and after erbium, such that its chemical state of half-life is together with the quantum unity as suggested by these formulas in this theory. Another interesting Stern-Brokat tree in hyper-algorithmic genomic transducing and other mechanisms such as cryogenics and atomic pixelation of bifurcated inorganic substances irradiating heat in environments where bicarbonation and oxidation have been accommodated. Complex numbers and complex quantum pseudo-number algorithms could be the key to the Riemann hypothesis and the Hodge conjecture concerning the prime number algorithmic solution to quantum computers and Turing machines as a whole or in general. For instance, a special relativistic functioning device, which runs on a physical operating system of sorts, and can shift or altogether alter the perspectives of the sizes and distances of the three-body calculation in astronomic projection, then the quantum numbers and complex numbers would function as time-variable determinants for the atomic probability formula, such that the ms constant multiplied by the ms number becomes the total certainty or the highest possible universal or multiversal outcome for the time travel. While it is fun to surmise the derivation of pi from the Mandelbrot fractals, it is important to notice the division of the prime number sequence by this sequence or algorithm. Z_n plus 1 equals Z_n squared plus c, where z is a complex number representing a point in the Mandelbrot set, and c is a constant complex number. To incorporate pi into this formula, we can set c equals e caret I pi, where e is the base of the natural logarithm. This would introduce the concept of pi into the Mandelbrot spiral equation. The Poincare conjecture, however, is beautifully conceived in Euler's formula and has been solved by Ricci-Flow in solid crystal fractals and prime number probabilities, and hence the surmising of epic circles to be the total number of arcs in pi or in a circle which is 2 pi radians or 60 arc pi. Many complex units of numbers have also been derived based on the complex calculations, and they include pi omega pi alpha, lambda pi and so on, which have come in handy in secluding all the quantum unities into units of quanta or quantum packets. For a very long time, mathematics professors have sought answers to the n equals np problem. The uncertainty principle and formula and the certainty formula come into play and are intersectingly intertwined. This forms part of the total solution to the universal problem and the millennium problems. Geometry can be resolved to topology and astrology can be resolved by cosmology and geography. All the dimensions of a polytope come under the duplicity of the continuum of numbers, quasi-particles in the E8 crystal, the Gossip polytope among others. In a way, this book seeks to help the reader understand the quantum and astrophysical as well as the astrological, and even beyond the realms of science like the parascientific and the metaphysical. This book is a thought-simulating book which doesn't offer the philosopher's stone as many scientists and alchemists promise, but rather seeks to stipulate tangents for the discovery of one. Quantum chemistry and quantum biology are very interesting scientific topics that may be studied not too in-depth or accurately by the seeker who seeks to unite the quantum realm and achieve the philosopher's stone. It is actually interesting to note that jitterite crystal is the same chemical properties as kryptonite, and the hypothetical chemical known as eternitium could be the element known as vibranium or even adamantium, hence exhibiting properties of the philosophic stone when stabilized by a certain element. Bosons and leptons form a quantum combination with a perfect electroneutronic spin state that could be the same as the tachyon, as well as wallons and quantons forming a perfect combination loophole needed for the creation of a wormhole. It is important to note that wave theory and wave duality principles come at hand and are very needed in the understanding of this theory. Particles could be the dormant state of the energy in the quantum realm, while space is the excited state, and studying the intermal sex gene in some animals would be key to breaking down the chemical principles that combine to make up DNA. Chapter 7. The future given another method of observation and discovery or acquisition of knowledge the scientific method solely, we could find other contemporary means to study nature given time. Also, given time, the human species is notable to achieve many of the solutions to intelligence or complex problems as a whole. In terms of the socio-economic and political crisis we face as a group, scientific discoveries in the future will relegate most of the major problems. For instance, energy and so forth will be accessed through other eternal sources such as fission and exploration of extraterrestrial elements. Though it is not best to say the problems of humans can be solved by any being external to humans, it is however important to note that the problems of humans are created by themselves in much simple and complex ways, depending on the mind's conditioning by the environment. So, it is however best to say that the most tranquil way or means of development will not be to practicalize an ideal, or idealize a practice, but rather in real terms, will be to advertise or explore the field of possibilities for each individual and create new political and economic reforms for the basic assumption that a threat greater than us humans may be lurking at our doorstep, and even though the threat of our own selves and the problems we create ourselves are always lurking at our doorstep, we need to understand as a species